Nobody saw this coming. Just when fans thought the love and hip-hop circle had finally settled into uneasy peace, Rasheeda stepped forward with a look that said she was done protecting anyone. What started as a quiet moment backstage turned into a shockwave that is now tearing through the fanbase. According to Rasheeda, the story everyone thought they knew about Yandy was never the full picture. And worse, she claims Mendeecees was kept in the dark on purpose. Sources say the tension had been building for weeks. Small comments, awkward silences, side glances that felt heavier than words. Fans are shocked because Rasheeda was always seen as careful, loyal, and measured. She was never the one to expose secrets for attention. That is exactly why this moment hit harder. When she finally spoke, emotions ran high and there was no walking it back. Rasheeda allegedly told close friends that Yandy's past was carefully rewritten, polished just enough to look clean. She claims there were conversations Mendeecees never knew about, choices that were framed as sacrifices, and timelines that did not line up. The most explosive part is not what Yandy did, but what Rasheeda says she hid. According to her, the truth would have changed everything. Witnesses describe the room going silent when Rasheeda said one sentence that changed the tone completely. He deserved to know before he committed his whole life. That line alone sent fans into a frenzy. Was this about loyalty, control, or something much deeper? Now the family is left divided. Friends are choosing sides, and viewers everywhere are asking the same question. If Rasheeda is finally telling the truth, what else has been buried all these years? The moment Rasheeda's words started circulating, everything shifted. What sounded like a private vent quickly turned into something much heavier, because the details she shared did not feel random or emotional. They felt rehearsed, like someone who had been holding on to the truth for too long. According to people close to the situation, Rasheeda did not wake up planning to expose anyone. It started with a casual conversation that spiraled out of control once Yandy's name came up. Rasheeda allegedly leaned back, quiet for a moment, and then said there were things Mendeecees never knew, things he was protected from under the name of love. Fans are shocked because Rasheeda and Yandy were never enemies. They smiled together, defended each other publicly, and played the role of strong women standing beside their men. But behind closed doors, Rasheeda claims she watched Yandy rewrite her own story. She says timelines never matched what was said on camera. Moments that were framed as sacrifice were actually choices that benefited only one person. Rasheeda reportedly said she stayed silent because it was not her marriage, not her place. But the silence started to feel like betrayal once she realized how deeply Mendeecees trusted the version of Yandy he was given. Sources say the breaking point came when Rasheeda overheard a conversation that made her stomach drop. Yandy was allegedly laughing about a past decision that had been presented to Mendeecees as unavoidable. Rasheeda claims that was the first time she understood how carefully curated the story really was. When she confronted Yandy privately, the mood shifted fast. Voices stayed low, but the tension was sharp. Rasheeda allegedly asked one simple question: why didn't you tell him the whole truth? Yandy's response was not denial. It was justification. According to Rasheeda, Yandy said some truths only complicate love. That some things are better left buried if the outcome is happiness. Rasheeda did not see it that way. She reportedly told friends that love built on edited facts is not protection, it is control. Emotions ran high after that exchange, and the friendship never fully recovered. What fans never saw was the distance growing, the short replies, the forced smiles at events where they once felt natural together. As whispers began spreading, Mendeecees started noticing the change too. Insiders say he felt something was off but could not place it. Rasheeda claims she watched him defend Yandy fiercely in rooms where questions were quietly forming. That is what made her feel sick. She allegedly said hearing him speak with such certainty about a past that was not fully real pushed her closer to breaking. The guilt of knowing something and saying nothing began to weigh heavier than loyalty. When the story finally leaked, it did not come from a dramatic confrontation on camera. It came from frustration. Rasheeda reportedly told a mutual friend that Mendeecees deserved the same choice Yandy gave herself. The choice to decide with all the information. Once those words left her mouth, there was no pulling them back. Phones started buzzing. Screenshots were shared. Fans were already picking sides before Yandy even responded. Yandy's reaction, according to sources, was cold and controlled. She did not cry. She did not deny everything. Instead, she questioned Rasheeda's timing. She allegedly said if the past was such a problem, why wait until now? That question alone divided everyone. Some felt Rasheeda was wrong for speaking up late. Others believed speaking late was still better than never. The family was left divided, with people arguing over whether truth has an expiration date. Rasheeda reportedly struggled with the fallout. She did not celebrate the chaos. Friends say she barely slept, replaying old conversations in her head. She wondered if she misread things, if she should have stayed quiet. But then she remembered the look on Mendeecees' face during certain conversations, the complete trust, the certainty. That memory hardened her resolve. She allegedly said she would rather be hated for honesty than loved for silence. As the tension grew, fans began revisiting old clips, old interviews, moments that once felt harmless. Suddenly everything looked different. Comments flooded social media saying the signs were always there. Others pushed back, accusing Rasheeda of exaggeration. But the damage was done. The narrative had cracked, and once a crack appears, people start digging. Behind the scenes, Yandy and Mendeecees were reportedly barely speaking. Not because he knew everything yet, but because he could feel the shift in energy. Trust does not break only when truth is revealed. Sometimes it breaks when someone realizes there might be more they do not know. Rasheeda knew that feeling all too well, and she claims that is exactly why she finally spoke. As the rumors grew louder, the pressure inside Yandy and Mendeecees' home became impossible to ignore. According to insiders, Mendeecees finally asked the question everyone had been avoiding. He did not accuse. He did not yell. He simply asked if there was anything about the past he should hear from her and not from the internet. That moment, sources say, froze the room. Yandy reportedly smiled first, a familiar move meant to calm tension, but the pause before she answered told a different story. She allegedly told him that Rasheeda was twisting old events, turning survival choices into scandals. Yandy framed it as jealousy mixed with resentment, suggesting Rasheeda was projecting her own marital struggles. Mendeecees wanted to believe her. Fans are shocked to hear that he defended Yandy publicly even while doubt quietly crept in. He told friends that people love tearing down strong women, especially when they stand firm beside their men. But privately, the cracks were starting to show. Rasheeda, meanwhile, was not enjoying the attention. She reportedly avoided group gatherings and stopped answering certain calls. The backlash was intense. Some accused her of betrayal. Others praised her courage. Emotions ran high as she watched people dissect her motives instead of the message. Close friends say Rasheeda kept repeating one thing. This was never about revenge. It was about truth sitting too heavy on her chest. Things escalated when an old acquaintance of Yandy's allegedly reached out to Mendeecees directly. The message was short but loaded, hinting that Rasheeda barely scratched the surface. That single message shifted everything. Mendeecees did not respond right away, but he saved it. Insiders say that night he barely slept, replaying memories, conversations, and timelines that once felt solid. The next confrontation was not loud, but it was devastating. Mendeecees allegedly laid everything on the table, asking Yandy to walk him through certain years, certain decisions. This time, her answers were less confident. Dates blurred, explanations stretched thin. She insisted nothing she did was meant to deceive, only to protect what they were building. That word again, protect. To Mendeecees, it began to sound like excuse. Rasheeda was not present for this moment, but she felt its impact. Mutual friends started telling her that Mendeecees was asking questions he never asked before. She reportedly felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that the truth was finally surfacing. Sadness that it took so much damage to get there. She allegedly said she never wanted to be the reason another home felt unstable. As fans dug deeper, old footage resurfaced showing Yandy making statements that now felt carefully worded. People compared interviews, pointing out subtle contradictions. Comment sections exploded with theories. Some defended Yandy fiercely, saying no one owes their entire past to the public or even to their partner. Others argued that love without honesty is manipulation dressed as devotion. The family was left divided. Some relatives stood firmly with Yandy, saying Rasheeda crossed an unforgivable line. Others quietly admitted they always felt pieces were missing from the story. Gatherings became awkward. Conversations stopped when certain names were mentioned. Loyalty was being tested on every level. Rasheeda reportedly received a message from Yandy that was not angry, but wounded. Yandy allegedly wrote that she never expected this from her, that silence would have been kinder. Rasheeda's response was simple and devastating. She said kindness that costs someone their right to choose is not kindness at all. That message ended any chance of reconciliation. Mendeecees, caught in the middle, began pulling away from everyone. Sources say he felt embarrassed more than angry. Embarrassed that he might have built his life on partial truths. Embarrassed that strangers were connecting dots he never saw. He started questioning not just Yandy, but himself. How did he miss it? What else did he accept without asking? By this point, the drama was no longer about one lie or one moment. It was about years of trust, power, and control quietly shifting behind the scenes. Rasheeda knew the storm was far from over. She reportedly told a friend that once people start asking real questions, answers come whether you want them to or not. And somewhere between suspicion and silence, the truth was still unfolding. By the time the situation reached this point, there was no controlling the narrative anymore. Mendeecees reportedly stopped taking calls from friends and even avoided family gatherings. According to insiders, he felt like everyone knew pieces of his life he was still trying to understand himself. The weight of public opinion pressed in from every side. Fans were shocked watching him go silent online, a move that only fueled speculation that something serious was unraveling behind closed doors. Yandy, on the other hand, shifted into defense mode. Sources say she began reaching out to allies, trying to remind them of everything she had sacrificed, everything she had stood through. She allegedly told people that Rasheeda was framing survival as deception, that she did what she had to do in moments where no one else was there to protect her. Emotions ran high as Yandy painted herself as a woman who carried burdens quietly, never expecting them to be used against her years later. But then another twist hit. A former friend from Yandy's past reportedly stepped forward with details that lined up too closely with Rasheeda's claims to ignore. Nothing explosive on its own, just small confirmations. Dates, locations, conversations that had been told differently before. Fans immediately latched onto these fragments, stitching them together into a picture that felt disturbingly clear. The family was left divided even further as people who once doubted Rasheeda began reconsidering her words. Rasheeda herself was struggling with the fallout in ways no one saw. Close friends say she questioned whether speaking up had caused more harm than healing. She missed the days when the tension was quiet, when secrets stayed buried. But every time she leaned toward regret, she remembered Mendeecees' face during certain conversations, the pride, the certainty. That memory reminded her why silence no longer felt like an option. Mendeecees eventually reached out to Rasheeda directly. The call was brief and heavy. He did not accuse her of lying. He did not thank her either. According to sources, he asked one question. Was there more? Rasheeda reportedly paused before answering. She told him she had shared what she personally witnessed, nothing more, nothing less. She said the rest of the truth was something only Yandy could give him. That answer stayed with him long after the call ended. Behind the scenes, arguments between Yandy and Mendeecees became more frequent. Not explosive fights, but quiet ones that hurt more. Trust erodes fastest in silence. Insiders say Mendeecees started asking for transparency about things that never mattered before. Finances, old friendships, decisions that were once brushed off. Yandy felt interrogated. Mendeecees felt deceived. Neither felt understood. Fans noticed the shift immediately. Interviews felt stiff. Public appearances lacked warmth. What once looked like a united front now felt like two people standing side by side but miles apart. Comment sections filled with speculation about whether love can survive withheld truth. Some argued that the past should stay buried. Others insisted that buried truths always find a way back up. The pressure intensified when producers allegedly caught wind of the situation. Whispers of cameras returning, of private conversations being pushed into public moments, added another layer of stress. Yandy reportedly felt cornered, believing everyone wanted her pain packaged for entertainment. Rasheeda wanted no part of it. She allegedly told friends she never intended this to become a storyline, only a warning. The family remained fractured. Some relatives urged Mendeecees to forgive and move forward. Others encouraged him to demand full honesty, no matter how uncomfortable. The divide was no longer about Yandy versus Rasheeda. It was about what truth means inside a relationship and who gets to decide when it matters. As weeks passed, Mendeecees became noticeably distant. He spent more time alone, more time thinking. Sources say he replayed moments he once brushed off, comments that felt strange even then. Hindsight sharpened everything. Trust, once cracked, makes even small memories feel suspicious. Rasheeda watched all of this from a distance, knowing her role in the chaos could never be undone. She allegedly said that truth does not arrive gently when it has been delayed for years. It arrives loud, messy, and unforgiving. And as the tension continued to rise, one thing became clear to everyone watching. This story was no longer about exposure. It was about consequences that were still unfolding. By the time this phase unfolded, the emotional damage was no longer theoretical. It was visible in the way Mendeecees carried himself, quieter, heavier, less certain of the ground beneath him. Insiders say he finally asked for space, not as a threat, not as punishment, but as survival. That request alone sent shockwaves through everyone involved. Fans are shocked because Mendeecees was always the one who fought to hold things together, even when it cost him personally. Now, for the first time, he was choosing distance over reassurance. Yandy reportedly did not take this well. Sources describe her cycling between anger and fear, accusing the outside world of poisoning her marriage while privately panicking that control was slipping through her fingers. She allegedly told close friends that Rasheeda lit a fire and walked away, leaving her to burn. But those same friends noticed something else. Yandy was no longer just defending herself. She was rewriting again, adjusting details in small ways, trying to regain narrative ground she had lost. Meanwhile, another quiet revelation surfaced. Someone close to the family allegedly admitted that Mendeecees had questioned certain things years ago but was always reassured just enough to move forward. This detail hit fans hard. It suggested the doubt was never new, only suppressed. Emotions ran high as people realized this was not a single lie situation, but a pattern of partial truths designed to manage outcomes rather than share reality. Rasheeda was dragged back into the conversation when messages from the past resurfaced. Nothing explicit, nothing illegal, just words that now carried different weight. Phrases that once sounded harmless suddenly felt calculated. Fans dissected every line, every timestamp. The internet turned into a courtroom, and intention became the hardest thing to prove. The family was left divided again, this time over whether intent even mattered anymore. Mendeecees reportedly confronted Yandy one final time without cameras, without witnesses. According to sources, he asked her to stop explaining and just answer directly. Were there things she chose not to tell him because she feared he would leave? That question lingered in the air. Yandy allegedly cried then, not loudly, but in a way that felt like surrender. She admitted she was afraid of losing him. She said she believed love justified silence. To her, omission was protection, not betrayal. That answer broke something, not because it confirmed the worst fears, but because it revealed a fundamental difference in values. Mendeecees reportedly said love should survive truth, not avoid it. That sentence marked a turning point. From that moment on, reconciliation stopped being about apologies and started being about rebuilding something that no longer had a clear foundation. Rasheeda learned about this conversation indirectly. When she did, she reportedly sat quietly for a long time. Friends say she did not feel victorious. She felt tired. She had carried this knowledge for years, and now that it was finally out, it brought no relief. Only a deep sadness for everyone involved. She allegedly said sometimes the truth does not free you. It just changes the shape of your life forever. Public reaction continued to split down the middle. Some fans rallied behind Yandy, saying fear-driven choices do not make someone evil. Others sided with Mendeecees, arguing that love without full consent is manipulation, no matter how gentle it looks. Debates raged over whether the past should define the present. Every opinion felt personal, like people were defending their own choices through this story. As for Mendeecees, sources say he began therapy quietly, away from the spotlight. He wanted clarity, not confirmation bias. He wanted to understand why he accepted answers that never fully satisfied him. That self-reflection marked another shift. This was no longer about blaming Yandy or thanking Rasheeda. It was about confronting his own role in a relationship built on imbalance. Yandy, feeling the distance grow, allegedly tried one last time to bring things back to normal. Public smiles, supportive posts, reminders of history, but fans could see through it. The warmth was gone. What remained was effort without ease. Trust, once fractured, does not respond to performance. Rasheeda stayed mostly silent during this phase, choosing distance over commentary. When asked privately if she regretted speaking up, she reportedly said regret assumes there was a better option. For her, silence had become unbearable. Truth, even late, felt necessary. As this chapter closed, one thing was undeniable. Nothing could return to how it was. Relationships had shifted permanently, loyalties had been tested, and the consequences of a hidden past were still rippling outward, touching every life connected to it. The story was not finished, but it had reached a point of no return, where every next step would be shaped by what had finally been said out loud. By now, the situation had evolved into something no one could ignore. The tension inside every interaction between Yandy and Mendeecees was palpable, even to casual observers. Sources say they were living under the same roof, yet there was a distance measured not in feet, but in silence. The conversations that once flowed naturally became strategic, carefully measured. Emotions ran high as both tried to navigate a reality reshaped by years of omissions and now exposed truths. Fans are shocked because what once looked like stability had quietly fractured under the surface, leaving a space where uncertainty thrived. Rasheeda reportedly remained on the sidelines, watching events unfold with a mix of apprehension and quiet satisfaction. Friends say she was deeply conflicted. She had triggered a storm, yes, but the intention was never to hurt anyone. She allegedly told them she only wanted the truth to exist openly, believing that only clarity, no matter how painful, could give Mendeecees the agency he deserved. Yet even she could not anticipate the full emotional fallout. The family was more divided than ever, lines drawn over perceived loyalty, timing, and morality. New information allegedly surfaced from an unexpected source, a former associate of Yandy's who claimed to have knowledge of conversations that corroborated Rasheeda's claims. The details were small at first, dates, locations, offhand remarks, but collectively they painted a pattern that even skeptics found hard to dismiss. Insiders report that Mendeecees began quietly reviewing past moments in a new light, replaying words and actions that previously seemed harmless but now felt loaded with hidden meaning. It was as if a new layer of reality had been peeled back, exposing fractures everyone had ignored. Yandy's response was reportedly a combination of defensiveness and desperation. She allegedly tried to regain control of the narrative, reminding friends and fans alike of her sacrifices and the hardships she endured, framing Rasheeda's revelations as exaggerations or misinterpretations. Yet even in this defensive posture, cracks showed. She began missing events, replying late to messages, and avoiding situations that might spotlight her private struggles. Insiders say the stress of maintaining an image while confronting exposed truths took a heavy toll. Mendeecees, on the other hand, reportedly sought quiet moments to process what he had learned. Sources describe him as withdrawn, reflective, and increasingly introspective. Friends say he was haunted by the realization that trust, once taken for granted, had to be rebuilt from scratch, and that rebuilding required confronting uncomfortable realities he had long chosen to overlook. He began questioning not just Yandy, but his own willingness to accept partial truths, and the ease with which he had allowed omissions to shape his understanding of their shared history. Rasheeda's presence, though largely behind the scenes, continued to influence events. Mutual friends report she occasionally intervened subtly, offering guidance or context to Mendeecees when he was confused, careful never to inflame tension further. Her role, according to insiders, was neither manipulative nor self-serving, it was a mix of conscience and protective instinct. Yet her involvement sparked debate among fans, who wondered whether a friend's interference was justified or whether it crossed a line, further complicating an already fraught situation. As weeks turned into months, the public narrative evolved alongside the private one. Fan forums dissected every social media post, every comment, every subtle interaction. Theories abounded. Some argued that Rasheeda had deliberately timed her revelations for maximum impact, others maintained that truth, no matter when delivered, is inherently valuable. Debates about morality, loyalty, and timing raged in comment sections and private messages alike, amplifying the emotional stakes for everyone involved. Insiders report a pivotal moment occurred when Mendeecees requested a private, unscripted conversation with Yandy. The exchange reportedly lasted hours and was described as tense, raw, and emotionally exhausting. Friends claim that both parties confronted not just each other, but themselves, examining choices, motivations, and the consequences of years spent concealing or rationalizing the past. Emotions ran high, tempers flared quietly, and tears were shed, some for regret, some for fear, and some for love that now existed under a new and fragile definition. The aftermath of that conversation allegedly left everyone recalibrating. Mendeecees reportedly emerged with a renewed sense of self, determined to approach relationships with more clarity and less assumption. Yandy, sources say, grappled with the realization that intentions alone could no longer shield her from scrutiny, either from those closest to her or from the public. Rasheeda, watching quietly, acknowledged that her decision to speak had irrevocably shifted the course of multiple lives, yet she remained steadfast in her belief that truth, however messy, was necessary. As this chapter unfolded, it became clear to insiders and fans alike that the consequences of hidden histories extend far beyond individual moments. Trust, once compromised, demands more than reconciliation, it requires transparency, reflection, and often, uncomfortable sacrifices. For Rasheeda, Mendeecees, and Yandy, the journey forward would be shaped not by what was said in private or staged for the camera, but by how each navigated the fragile interplay between past choices and present realities. And while fans continued to debate and dissect, one undeniable truth emerged. Once the dark past was exposed, nothing could remain the same. As the tension continued to mount, the private lives of Yandy, Mendeecees, and Rasheeda became almost impossible to separate from the public spectacle. Insiders say every interaction felt amplified, every word measured, as if the world were watching, and, of course, it was. Social media exploded with theories, reactions, and fan debates that dissected every subtle glance, every awkward smile. Fans were shocked at how quickly what began as a personal revelation transformed into a cultural moment, one that now seemed to dictate behavior, decisions, and alliances in real time. Rasheeda reportedly remained deliberately quiet, observing the fallout from a distance. Friends say she was haunted by guilt and worry, but also a sense of relief that the truth she carried for so long was finally out. She allegedly told close confidants that the purpose was never to humiliate, to punish, or to spark drama, but to empower Mendeecees with the full picture of the past. Yet even as she tried to stay neutral, her influence was felt in subtle ways. Sources claim she offered guidance to Mendeecees, reminding him to ask questions carefully, to separate anger from inquiry, and to trust his instincts. Yandy, meanwhile, struggled to regain control of her narrative. Sources say she alternated between defensive strategies and attempts at reconciliation. She reminded friends and family of her sacrifices, her loyalty, and her challenges, framing Rasheeda's revelations as exaggerations or distortions. Yet even her most carefully constructed defenses could not mask the cracks that had emerged. Insiders report that the pressure of balancing image, public perception, and private guilt weighed heavily, leaving her exhausted and on edge. Mendeecees reportedly spent more and more time reflecting alone. Friends describe him as introspective, quieter than usual, replaying conversations, reviewing timelines, and reconsidering choices he had long assumed were settled. For the first time, he confronted the possibility that trust could be manipulated, not maliciously, but through omission. Sources say he realized that navigating love, truth, and loyalty was far more complex than he had imagined. The past he had once accepted without question now demanded scrutiny, and the consequences were unavoidable. Another twist allegedly arrived when a mutual acquaintance stepped forward with corroborating details that aligned with Rasheeda's account. Nothing sensational on its own, but enough to make Mendeecees pause. Dates matched, stories overlapped, moments that had once seemed trivial now carried weight. Fans immediately dissected every fragment, amplifying speculation and dividing opinion even further. The family, caught in this whirlwind, became increasingly fractured as lines were drawn not just over the truth of events, but over perceptions, timing, and intentions. Insiders report a crucial confrontation occurred when Mendeecees requested a private, candid conversation with Yandy, away from cameras, fans, and friends. Sources say it lasted hours, emotionally charged, with moments of silence punctuating raw dialogue. Neither side accused outright, but each explored the gaps between actions and intentions, memories and realities. Emotions ran high: tears, frustration, and regret mixed with love and lingering loyalty. The conversation, according to friends, fundamentally reshaped the dynamic of their relationship. Public reactions mirrored the private chaos. Fans dissected every social media post, scrutinized old interviews, and debated the ethics of truth, timing, and omission. Some defended Yandy, arguing that fear and protection justify silence. Others sided with Rasheeda, emphasizing the importance of full transparency, especially when a life partner's decisions are at stake. The debate intensified with every post, clip, and screenshot shared, as the narrative became as much about public morality as private reality. Rasheeda's presence remained a subtle force. Although she did not participate directly, her earlier revelations continued to influence behavior and decisions. Insiders claim she offered insight and advice when approached, carefully guiding Mendeecees without inflaming conflict. She maintained a delicate balance, aware that even small interventions could be interpreted as interference, yet believing her guidance was essential to help navigate the fractured trust and emotional fallout. As weeks passed, the ramifications became clear. Trust, once fractured, demanded more than apologies. It required transparency, self-reflection, and the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. Mendeecees reportedly began therapy, seeking clarity and understanding beyond public perception. Yandy grappled with the weight of past omissions and the long-term consequences for her personal and public life. And Rasheeda, observing quietly, recognized the irrevocable impact of speaking out, understanding that even well-intentioned truth carries consequences that ripple through lives far beyond its initial revelation. In the end, insiders agree that nothing would ever return to the way it was. Relationships were permanently altered, loyalties were tested and redefined, and for everyone involved, the exposure of the past created a new reality, one that demanded reckoning, reflection, and perhaps, cautious hope for reconciliation, but only on terms dictated by truth, not convenience. Fans continue to watch, debate, and speculate, knowing that what started as a revelation has become a story with no simple resolution, a narrative still unfolding with consequences that will echo for years to come. As the weeks turned into months, the fallout from Rasheeda's revelation showed no signs of slowing. Mendeecees reportedly continued to wrestle with the complexities of what he had learned, revisiting moments he once accepted without question, now seeing them in a new, sharper light. Friends say he was quieter, more introspective, and careful with words, as if each interaction could shift the fragile balance of trust he was trying to rebuild. The silence that once seemed ordinary now carried weight, a reminder that nothing could be taken at face value again. Yandy, on the other hand, allegedly oscillated between defensiveness and attempts to regain control of the narrative. Sources describe her as carefully reconstructing moments in her favor, reminding friends and family of the loyalty she believed she had shown, and framing Rasheeda's intervention as unnecessary, even harmful. Yet insiders noticed cracks in her armor: missed calls, delayed responses, and avoidance of situations that might reignite scrutiny. The stress of maintaining appearances while managing the truth created a tension that was almost palpable, even to those on the periphery. Rasheeda reportedly remained largely behind the scenes, choosing to observe rather than act. Close friends say she struggled with guilt and relief simultaneously. She had exposed truths that she believed were necessary, yet the consequences were heavy and unpredictable. She allegedly told confidants that her goal was never to punish or humiliate, but to ensure that Mendeecees had the full story, believing that understanding, even painful, was essential for agency and self-determination. Her careful balance of involvement and distance made her influence felt without overtly shaping events, though some family members continued to debate her motives. Another layer of complication came when a former acquaintance surfaced with corroborating details that aligned with Rasheeda's claims. Small confirmations, dates, locations, conversations, added credibility to her account and intensified scrutiny. Fans eagerly dissected fragments online, interpreting each as evidence of a broader pattern, and the family became increasingly polarized. Loyalty, trust, and perception all collided, with each new detail raising more questions than answers. The emotional stakes for everyone involved escalated alongside the public fascination. Insiders recount a pivotal, private conversation between Mendeecees and Yandy that reportedly lasted hours. The discussion was intense but quiet, without blame, accusations, or public spectacle. Instead, they confronted inconsistencies, omissions, and the long-term effects of hidden truths. Tears were shed, frustration expressed, and moments of silent reflection punctuated dialogue. The outcome, sources say, was not immediate reconciliation but a fundamental shift in how both approached trust, honesty, and communication going forward. The public remained captivated, dissecting every post, every gesture, every subtle interaction. Opinions split sharply. Some defended Yandy, emphasizing fear and protection as reasons for silence, while others supported Rasheeda, highlighting the necessity of full disclosure in intimate relationships. Debates raged across forums, social media threads, and comment sections, framing the story as both a personal drama and a broader moral question about loyalty, honesty, and timing. Rasheeda's influence continued subtly, guiding Mendeecees through reflections and questions without inciting conflict. Friends describe her as a stabilizing yet unobtrusive presence, providing insight while maintaining boundaries. Her actions underscored the complex interplay of ethics, truth, and responsibility, as she navigated the fine line between intervention and interference. The months revealed that trust, once fractured, requires more than apologies or explanations. It demands transparency, self-reflection, and accountability. Mendeecees reportedly sought therapy to process the revelations and their emotional impact, aiming to understand both the omissions he had accepted and the patterns that allowed them to persist. Yandy faced the long-term consequences of past decisions, confronting the personal and public implications of omission. Rasheeda, observing quietly, recognized that revealing the truth, even with good intentions, permanently reshaped relationships, forcing a reckoning that extended far beyond the initial disclosure. Ultimately, insiders agree that nothing could ever return to the previous state. Relationships were fundamentally altered, loyalties tested and recalibrated, and lives redirected by the exposure of hidden histories. The story that began with Rasheeda's revelation continues to unfold, as every choice, every interaction, and every reflection moves the players closer to understanding, or further from resolution. The public watches, debates, and speculates, aware that the consequences of a revealed past are enduring, unpredictable, and transformative, with repercussions that will echo for years to come. The aftermath of Rasheeda's revelations settled into a tense, uneasy rhythm. Mendeecees reportedly maintained a careful distance, taking time to process everything he had learned. Sources describe him as quieter than ever, reflecting on moments he once took for granted, replaying conversations and decisions that now carried new meaning. Every glance, every offhand comment, even small silences became charged with unspoken questions. Fans are shocked at how public perception shifted alongside private realities, as a couple once seen as united began to appear fractured in ways subtle yet unmistakable. Yandy, meanwhile, allegedly tried to regain control over her narrative. Friends say she alternated between defensiveness and vulnerability, emphasizing the loyalty, sacrifices, and resilience she had demonstrated over the years. She framed Rasheeda's intervention as exaggeration, even betrayal, insisting that her past choices had been motivated solely by protection and love. Yet insiders noted cracks in her behavior, delayed responses, avoidance of gatherings, and tense interactions with mutual friends, which suggested the weight of scrutiny was taking its toll. Rasheeda reportedly continued to observe from the sidelines, balancing relief that the truth was finally out with worry over the chaos it had unleashed. Friends describe her as conflicted but resolute, believing that sharing what she knew was necessary for Mendeecees to make informed choices about his life. Her guidance remained subtle. She offered insight when asked, encouraged reflection over reaction, and maintained distance to avoid being cast as manipulative. Her quiet influence shaped the dynamics without overtly steering them, though family divisions persisted. Another twist reportedly surfaced when a mutual acquaintance provided details that aligned with Rasheeda's account. Small confirmations, dates, locations, conversations, added credibility and further complicated perceptions. Fans dissected every fragment online, amplifying speculation and increasing tension within the family. Loyalty and trust became increasingly fragile, and relationships that had seemed secure were forced to confront years of concealed truths. Emotions ran high as both insiders and outsiders weighed intentions against actions and protection against deception. Insiders claim a pivotal, private conversation occurred between Mendeecees and Yandy, lasting hours and marked by emotional intensity. Neither side accused, instead, they confronted inconsistencies, omissions, and the impact of hidden histories. Tears, frustration, and moments of reflection punctuated dialogue. Sources say this exchange fundamentally shifted how both viewed trust, honesty, and communication, laying the groundwork for a cautious reassessment of their relationship. Public reaction mirrored private tension. Fans analyzed social media posts, interviews, and interactions for subtle clues, debating morality, timing, and the ethics of disclosure. Some defended Yandy, citing fear and protection as justification for omissions. Others supported Rasheeda, emphasizing the importance of full transparency for informed consent in intimate relationships. Comment sections exploded with conflicting viewpoints, reflecting the broader cultural fascination with loyalty, truth, and consequence. Rasheeda's subtle involvement continued to influence Mendeecees. Friends say she guided his reflections, offered insight without confrontation, and helped him separate emotion from judgment. Her role highlighted the delicate balance between influence and interference, ethics and loyalty, demonstrating the complexity of navigating truth in the aftermath of hidden pasts. As months passed, it became clear that trust, once fractured, demanded more than apologies or explanations. Transparency, self-reflection, and accountability became essential. Mendeecees reportedly sought therapy to process the revelations and explore the patterns that allowed omissions to persist. Yandy confronted the long-term consequences of her choices, navigating both personal and public ramifications. Rasheeda, observing quietly, recognized that revealing truth, even with good intentions, irreversibly reshaped relationships, demanding reckoning, reflection, and a cautious approach to moving forward. Ultimately, insiders agree that nothing could return to the way it was. Relationships were permanently altered, loyalties tested and recalibrated, and lives redirected by the exposure of hidden histories. The story that began with Rasheeda's revelation continues to evolve, each choice, interaction, and reflection contributing to a new reality. Fans continue to watch, debate, and speculate, aware that the consequences of revealed truths are enduring, unpredictable, and transformative, with echoes that will shape the lives of everyone involved for years to come. That brings us to the current stage of the unfolding drama, where every interaction carries the weight of past revelations. Insiders say Mendeecees has become markedly more cautious, carefully navigating conversations and situations, as if testing the ground before committing to any action. Even simple exchanges carry layers of interpretation, with every word weighed against the backdrop of what has been exposed. Fans are shocked at the transformation, noting how a couple once viewed as unshakable now moves through tension and silence with visible fragility. Yandy, according to sources, continues her effort to maintain control of her narrative. She alternates between defensiveness and attempts at vulnerability, emphasizing years of loyalty, sacrifices made, and challenges endured. She frames Rasheeda's involvement as a misinterpretation of her intentions, painting the revelations as unnecessary interference. Yet insiders note that despite her efforts, cracks are visible: delayed responses, avoidance of certain social settings, and cautious interactions with mutual friends. The stress of reconciling public image with private scrutiny has created an almost constant tension. Rasheeda, meanwhile, reportedly remains observant but distant. Friends say she experiences a mix of relief that the truth is out and concern over the fallout it has caused. She allegedly told confidants that her motivation was never to punish, embarrass, or provoke drama, but to empower Mendeecees with the knowledge necessary to make informed choices. Her guidance remains subtle, influencing decisions through careful reflection rather than overt intervention, yet her presence continues to shape the dynamics between all parties involved. Further complicating matters, a former acquaintance surfaced with corroborating details supporting Rasheeda's account. Small confirmations, dates, conversations, and interactions have strengthened her credibility and intensified scrutiny. Fans dissected every detail online, amplifying tension and creating new divisions within the family. Loyalty, trust, and perception have all become fragile, with each new detail forcing reassessment and emotional reckoning. The pressure has forced the involved parties to confront not only past decisions but also the long-term implications of secrecy and omission. Insiders report that a critical private conversation occurred between Mendeecees and Yandy. Lasting hours, it was intense but restrained, with neither accusing the other outright. Instead, they confronted discrepancies, omissions, and the emotional impact of hidden histories. Frustration, reflection, and emotional release punctuated the dialogue, fundamentally shifting the approach to trust and communication. Sources suggest that while immediate resolution was impossible, the conversation marked a turning point in navigating the fractured relationship. Public attention remained relentless. Fans scrutinized every post, comment, and interview for hidden meanings. Discussions of morality, timing, and loyalty erupted across forums and social media platforms. Some defended Yandy, citing fear or protection as justification for past omissions. Others supported Rasheeda, insisting on full transparency as essential to informed consent and relational integrity. Debates intensified, blurring lines between personal drama and public ethical consideration, reflecting the complex social fascination with truth, loyalty, and consequence. Rasheeda's influence, though subtle, continues. Sources say she provides guidance to Mendeecees, helping him reflect without manipulating outcomes. Her role highlights the delicate balance between intervention and interference, demonstrating the ethical complexity of navigating truth, loyalty, and accountability in emotionally charged situations. As time passes, it becomes clear that trust, once compromised, requires more than apology or explanation. Transparency, self-reflection, and accountability have become critical for moving forward. Mendeecees reportedly engages in therapy to process the revelations and their emotional ramifications, exploring both past omissions and his responses. Yandy confronts the long-term consequences of her actions, both personally and publicly. Rasheeda, observing from a distance, recognizes that truth, while necessary, permanently reshapes relationships, demanding reflection, reckoning, and careful navigation of the path ahead. Ultimately, insiders agree that nothing can return to the previous state. Relationships have been altered irrevocably, loyalties tested and recalibrated, and lives redirected by the exposure of hidden histories. The story that began with Rasheeda's revelation continues to evolve, with each interaction, reflection, and decision reshaping the landscape. Fans remain captivated, debating and speculating, aware that the consequences of revealed truth are enduring, unpredictable, and transformative, echoing through the lives of everyone involved for years to come. So now that you've seen the full story unfold, the question is, what do you think really happened behind closed doors? Was Rasheeda a hero exposing the truth, or did she cross a line that should never have been crossed? And how much of Yandy's past should really define her present? We want to hear your thoughts. Comment below with your opinions, share what you believe, and let us know who you stand with in this explosive drama. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest updates, because this story is far from over. Stay tuned, things are only getting more intense.